Have you ever encountered a hurdle with launching or growing your business? Listen, there are two things that run a business, the back end and your soft skills.
Telling you right now, if these aren't in place, you'll lose clients and you'll lose money. You don't want that? Well, you're in the right place.
Hey, I'm Dana.
Hey, I'm Sarah.
We're your hosts of the Entrepreneur Encounter, and we're going to give you a behind-the-scenes glance into our businesses, give you genuine feedback, tips and tricks, plus occasionally bring on guests that care about supporting you to grow your business organically and nurturing authentic relationships. Are you ready?
Welcome back to another episode of Entrepreneur Encounter. We are your hosts, Sarah
and Dana.
We are so excited to have our guest on today, Gresh. He is the founder of Blue 16 Media and CBNation, and he's here to share some incredible insights on time management, productivity, and the power of leveraging both people and technology to drive success. So welcome, Gresh. We are excited to have you here today.
Sarah, Dana, I'm excited to be here as well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. So before we just dive into everything, can you tell us a little bit about you and all the great things you do?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very much so a busybody. I'm from the Washington, D.C. area. I've pretty much been here since I was like 5 or 6 years old. I've always had like entrepreneurial tendencies. So one of the things I always kind of go back to is I started a family newspaper when I was 10 because my dad was in the military. We didn't have all these snazzy tools where we could instantly connect with people instantaneously all across the world or across the United States even. So I started that family newspaper to kind of be the TMZ to our family to cover all the things that were going on in our family. And because we sent care packages to my dad, I would put those newspapers in the care packages and we would send them to him, keep them updated on all the things that were going on in our family. Then I also sold some of the subscriptions to family members and people close to our family too. So that was kind of the story that I always went back to because I felt like that was a little bit more of who I am. But fast forward a lot of years, I ended up being an English major, went to Howard University for undergrad, went to Georgetown for my master's, all still in the DC area. And graduated during the economic crisis. So lots of crazy things were happening. So I was laid off once, was going to get laid off again. Started to do a lot of freelance writing. Eventually started a digital marketing company because I met somebody from a networking group. And 11 years later, that's what I've been working on. Lots of interviews as well. So done a lot of blogging around business and entrepreneurship. Have a podcast as well too. So lots and lots of things, but all in the kind of same vein of that 10-year-old Gresh that started that family newspaper.
That is probably the most unique entrepreneur starting point I have heard so far. I love that.
That is pretty awesome. I think that's really cool. You know, it's so funny when you're talking about how writing the newsletters and whatnot. I remember when I was a kid, because I love writing. I write as a hobby. I write for my business, like all the things. And I always thought it would be really cool to be like a journalist for like a music magazine. Obviously, that's not happening right now, but I mean, I can still do that maybe later on in time. But like Dana said, that's a really awesome story.
So funny. Like I had the exact same dreams, but it was actually for sports. So I love writing. So I always thought I was going to be on ESPN. And actually, funny enough, that's why I got my master's in that. One of my classmates is on ESPN and everything too. So it's pretty cool to kind of see like where those kind of journeys and dreams as kids take you.
The only thing I knew as a kid is I wanted to make my own money and do my own thing. That was my entrepreneur spirit is I don't want to just work for you. I want to work for myself. You can't tell me what to do. I hate being told what to do. So we found a way to make this happen.
Nice.
Honestly inspiring. I love that 10-year-old you wanted to do it and came up with it, but that you also had the support of your family to do it. Many entrepreneurs growing up, their family didn't know how to support that type of thing. So that's why they're just now getting started later in life and like really diving into that. With that thought process, let's talk first about time management and productivity, even just for a short bit. Because I really like the idea of power of leveraging people and technology. And so I want to devote a lot of time to that because it sounds like you networking opened up some amazing doors. But to get to that networking event, you had to manage your time and be efficient with your productivity. I want to make sure that's important. So can you share some techniques, hacks, and tools for our listeners to become more efficient that you learned even as early as 10 years old?
Absolutely. And one of the things as a kid, you're just kind of doing what lights you up. And that's what my 10-year-old self was doing. Fast forward a lot of years, though, it's funny, like my parents, I do always feel like I've had that support, but I don't know that I had that support when I took the leap into entrepreneurship as I got older. And I think so many times we forget that sometimes people's, I don't know if limitations is the right word, but their fears bubble up into things they're saying to try to maybe keep you from failing. But a lot of times failing is the way that you kind of learn and get better and can grow. And I think that's one of the things that I've learned over time and over years of like identifying like who and does what. But when I started my digital marketing business, I had lots and lots of jobs and I kind of skipped over that. I did so many different things, and time management was one of the things that I leaned on the most without sometimes even knowing it. I think there's a quote that said, if you want something done, give it to a busy person, because they will be able to prioritize, understand what goes where, when I can do this, when I can't do this, and they'll do it as effectively and efficiently as possible. So at that time, I did a lot of, I didn't know at the time, was more like time blocking. So when I first started my business, I was in and had a leadership position at a networking group that kind of gave me the confidence to be an entrepreneur. I also was an adjunct professor at a local college, in Northern Virginia Community College. I had started the job that I got laid off from. I actually started to, because I had the relationships with other people. I used to go to preschools and run sports camps for like the 2 to 5 year olds, which was my absolute favorite job.
I bet that was so fun.
It was so much fun. I used to come in with a big inflatable Mr. Football. And, you know, at that age, you're not really teaching them sports because they're trying to stand up and walk. So you're teaching them little small things. So just all the things that you see, it was like exciting. That was so much fun. So I was able to kind of do that because I had some relationships, even though I got laid off and that franchise had left the area. I was able to kind of build those things. Then I was still trying to run my digital marketing business. So I did all those things, but I time blocked because I basically had a time a day that I devoted to each of those things. It was really crazy. I used to be always burnt out by Thursday because I would teach 3 classes as an adjunct professor on Thursday. I think Tuesdays it was called Kids Sports Drill. So I used to run the different sports camps. Wednesday was my networking. And I would just go through those kind of steps every single week. And it became so important to lean on probably the biggest thing, which was time blocking, knowing that during that day or that time, this is what I was focused on and devoted. And it kind of takes you taking a step back and looking at what those things are that you're trying to do to achieve, and then figuring out how to prioritize that. So that was one of the biggest things that I was able to do at that time. And I call them CEO hacks because on my podcast, we always ask people apps, books, habits that make them more effective and efficient. And time blocking is one of the biggest things that I leaned on then, but even have come up consistently throughout the podcast as well, too. Is like, how can you maximize your time so that you can be present and focus on whatever that task might be, and you don't get overextended in too many different directions.
I love that. I talk about time blocking a lot on multiple occasions, but this month I shared it with Sarah. I was like super excited. So normally I do block things off and I color code, but I was almost married to how it looked on my calendar instead of, this is not what my day to day looks like. Because I also have 2 big clients that I can't just delegate everything off to in my personal business. So I started, I kept the time blocks, but the night before, or usually the morning of, I go in and look at my Google Calendar because, they're set on repeat, and I move things around based on where we're recording the podcast right now. On another day, normally I would be doing client work. So I have to manually shifting it down. So as soon as this is over, that will get my time and attention. And I'm only changing it for today. And then everything else is getting shifted. So at any given point, I know exactly what I'm doing and what I need to focus on. And I've even included white space, like do not schedule here, because I am really bad about not getting up. Like I have a reminder on my watch. I have an Apple Watch to say stand up. But if I don't have those, I will seriously sit for 8 hours and not get up unless I'm starving or dehydrated.
Yeah.
But I also color code my calendar too. So it's at a drop of a hat. I can see okay, this is where I need to shift to. For someone that struggles with that, how do you encourage them to implement something like that?
I love that piece, and that, especially that color coding part as well, too, because I think it's not something I consciously do. I think I use Gmail or Google Workspace and it will do that kind of automatically. But I think the beauty of that is you can always zoom out and see where you're spending your time. Like if you don't have enough white space and you're going crazy and you feel like there's so many things happening, sometimes you may need to create more of that color like within your calendar, and to be able to zoom out, you can definitely kind of see that. But for people that are just kind of really thinking about time blocking, thinking about what they can do, I think always it's important to make sure that you understand like what your goals are and what you're trying to accomplish. Like, what does success look like? That could be from a business standpoint, but we're all human as well too. Like from a human standpoint, whether you're a parent or your stepdad, stepmom, whatever that might be, grandpa, grandma, whatever that might be, you figure out what that success looks like. But I think once you start to do that, I would say the next thing that you do is start to really maybe pay attention to how you're spending your time. Because I think most people see what they want to do, and then they're not kind of aware of like what they're doing on a regular basis. And I think being able to kind of document that and be aware of like, I'm spending 1.5 hours here where I had no idea, or I am just kind of going through TikTok or going through Instagram, and you're not even realizing that how much time you're spending. But I think if you start to document that, start to pay attention to those things and see, I think that's the first step, because then you can start to do the rearranging, the focus of like, hey, I didn't realize I spent this many hours on email, when that's not really going to help you to move your business forward. And I think so many times we fall in those traps and don't have a good awareness around how we're spending those times. So I think to really be able to pay attention to that, kind of map that out, that's how you can take the step to start to optimize it even more. But it's hard to start when you don't know exactly like how that time's being spent.
That's true. Even I think recognizing how long a task actually takes versus, oh, I can get that done in 5 minutes. When in reality, it probably takes you 20 minutes. So now you already feel behind because you estimated the wrong bucket of time. I'm like that with graphic design. I keep thinking, oh, I can throw this thing together on Canva, lickety split. And then I'm like 20, 30 minutes later, I'm like, this is not even, I'm not done yet. Some days are better than others. Like that may be an exaggeration, but even like responding to emails or follow-up tasks, because I use Honeybook and I have workflows that automatically send me these reminders. But if I'm not thinking about it, I'll have 50 reminders at one time. And I'm like, I'm not getting done with this in an efficient time. This is going to take me an hour. Those are things to keep in mind. So I'm curious to know, with your time management and productivity, do you have a morning routine or an evening routine that like really helps you be more intentional? And this may be a little woo-woo. I can already feel Sarah.
I'm always curious what other people do for their morning routine, because Dana says like woo-woo, right? I mean, like you can just get up and have a cup of coffee and enjoy your time alone. I mean, it can be so simple. So yeah.
What does yours look like?
I do have a morning routine, and that's one of the most consistent things that came about like during the interviews. It's like people had some type of morning routine, but just as Sarah said, it doesn't necessarily have to be this. But I think that's one of the big things that we kind of have to give ourselves a little bit more, I guess, grace for. Is like so many times we hear that, okay, you have to wake up at 4 a.m. You have to be able to drink your 1.5 cups of water. You have to get your coffee. You have to read a book. You have to work out. And you're like, if I didn't check out all those boxes, then I haven't done that. But especially for entrepreneurial people, whatever your profession is, whatever your service and offering that you're doing. But then the other thing that you're doing, you're a part-time firefighter, because there's always things that are happening that you kind of have to put out those fires and do those things. Things don't always go within the allotted amount of time. You said this is going to, like you said, it's going to take an hour, Dana. It ends up taking 2 hours, or you're like, oh, the technology broke down, so now I got to send this. So all these things happen on a regular basis. So
that sure does.
Exactly.
It sure does.
Sure does all the time.
I have a background in wedding planning, so nothing ever goes according to plan. So I'm just like, it sure does.
Yeah, you've been built for this.
You can have a plan. We were talking about the white space in your calendar, but you can use that white space if you have to put out a fire, because something is going to happen. Something may happen, because yesterday, for example, there were so many fires I was putting out, and I'm so glad that I had the space to be able to put those out, because if I didn't, then I probably would have been stressed and wanted to just close up shop and not work for the rest of the day, you know?
With the firefighter mentality, what do you do in the morning to help you be more capable of handling fires that pop up?
I think the biggest thing about that morning routine for me, like I have a morning routine, and I can break that down of exactly what I do. But one of the things I do try to create is that space of just like peace before everything happens, before I take the dog out, before I wake up our son when he's in school, just all those things. We try to create space to just kind of be to some degree. Like, of course, you want to start thinking about your day and having that intentionality around that. But I think because things go haywire quickly, and they can go haywire quickly, you kind of have to have that time that you are not sometimes requiring to check off a list. So I think that there's ebbs and flows to my morning routine and how I tweak it and change it. Sometimes I, by nature, like to do too many things. So sometimes I gotta like sift it out and say, like, why am I really doing all these things? But I think it's so powerful. And that's why I love both of what you said about having space, because I think for me, especially, it's like I always want to check off boxes. That's like something I enjoy doing. But if we don't have space for things to happen, then when things do go haywire, or sometimes you just need space to recharge, you don't have it because you're fully loaded throughout your entire day. And that's not going to serve you or serve the people that you end up want to work with either.
I'm very much a list person. And
I figured.
I have yet to meet an entrepreneur that just does one thing at a time. And I finally did get to a point during first quarter. I think I told you, Sarah. I definitely told one of my entrepreneur friends, her name is Beth. I was like, if I come to you with some idea to start something else, I want you fully permission to say no. Tell me as a grown adult, I am not allowed to do whatever it is, because I love coming up with new ideas. I am a generator, I think is what my human design is. I can come up with an idea and flesh it out, build out the strategy, but then I need someone else to carry the torch and it gets exhausting. So I stepped back and I made sure Dana's Desk, which is my business, this podcast, and I'm launching a Pinterest graphic template subscription. I was like, these are the only 3 things I'm allowed to do this year, and honestly, probably next year. Everything else has to be a flat no. Not right now, because I didn't have any white space. I was always so overwhelmed and I cried a lot.
I think as an entrepreneur, we have so many ideas that we were like, okay, we can make this a service, we can make this a product. But if we keep doing that, then we're not going to have the white space. We're not going to be able to manage our time wisely. We're not going to be creative as we want to be, because personally, I've become overwhelmed with the ideas that I have. I'm like, well, I can do this and I can do that, but why don't you just focus on what you do already and like master that, get really, really good at that. And then maybe 5-10 years from now, open up another business, do another service. Because if you don't master one thing and you keep trying to do other things, then everything is going to be left behind. And essentially, I think that's probably why some entrepreneurs flop, is because they're like, okay, running after each idea, not managing their time wisely.
Hey there, listeners. Ever feel like you're struggling to connect with customers or lead your team effectively? That's where soft skills come in.
Entrepreneur Encounter isn't just another podcast. We're a community dedicated to helping early stage entrepreneurs like you master the soft skills that make or break a business.
Technical skills are important, but without communication, collaboration, and confidence, your business might never get off the ground to the next level.
In our membership, Dana and I share actionable insights and tips to help you nurture the soft skills you need to thrive.
Give you access to bonus content, workshops, and a network of like-minded entrepreneurs who are all on the same journey.
We'll teach you how to boost your confidence,
Become a leader who inspires and motivates your team,
navigate conflict like a pro,
to resolve disagreements without drama and build stronger relationships,
communicate clearly and concisely, get your message across, build trust, and close the deal.
If you're ready to take your business to the next level, join the circle by clicking the link in the show notes.
You know what's a huge thing? I'll give a shout out to Coach Kim, Coach K. She made me create a no new ideas notebook.
That's awesome.
Yes, it was because you know yourself, you know that you always have those ideas. So how could I not lose those ideas? Because sometimes those ideas are really, really good. And I think that we also should give ourselves space to be able to kind of just generate those. So even on Mondays, like I have time where I can think through those ideas and think about what things I want. But I think by putting them in a place it helps me, at least me right now, to not try to go down those rabbit holes. It's like, okay, let me try all these things and then I don't end up with any of that empty space. But that was one of the really cool practical things, one of those like hacks that I still lean on, because I have now a full list of like all the ideas that are popping up, but I know that I don't necessarily have to pursue them right now.
Yeah, for sure. I have a client that I'm currently working with, and she's full of ideas. And I'm kind of like along for the ride. Like I help her like do admin tasks here and there. It's like she's a smaller client, so I'm not too busy with her. But I'm like, what are we doing? Like, what do you want to do? Like, you have a business, but we're just kind of going back and forth. She's always asking me like to research this and research that. And yesterday I had a conversation with her. I'm like, listen, what are we doing? Like, I'm fully prepared to be your business manager and this and that, but like, we got to pinpoint one thing because she has thousands of ideas. I'm like, nope, let's just choose one for now.
Yeah. And that's been such a huge thing. I don't know if you all have heard of Traction in EOS.
No.
So we're implementing EOS. It's kind of like an operating system for your business. And there's a book called Traction, but there's people that can actually help you implement it. But with the digital marketing, I am an ideas person as well, too. So they actually have like a whole entire title of what that person is. And that's the visionary. Visionary is a person that you're actually supposed to come up with ideas. You can create and solve big problems and things like that. Most entrepreneurs are probably that visionary because they have the ideas, the vision and things like that. What they usually need is that integrator. The integrator is a person that can actually be the business manager, actually understands the aspects of the business, can kind of fight those fires, can manage the team. And I think what happens is, and it's kind of along the lines of E-Myth too, where we don't realize that we have to kind of have both of those roles until we have a full operator in our business. And that's part of our DNA. That's what makes us who we are. But we can't ever get to that other level if we don't have that integrator in some form, shape, or fashion, like in our business. And most of the time, we're one or the other. But sometimes we have to hold on to both of those roles. So that was really, impactful for me to learn more about and start to implement in our business.
I'll make sure that link is in our show notes. Because that's officially on my I need to read list. I think that's the perfect segue, honestly, though, into discussing leveraging people and technology together, because you need both of those mindsets that you're talking about. So how have you leveraged people over the course of owning a business and diving into entrepreneurship to enhance your business operations and growth?
Just that part of understanding a little bit more from a Traction standpoint. You even put together like accountability chart. That accountability chart gives you an idea of who does what, and you want to try to make sure that people don't have as many roles. That's helped out a ton. But now I'm a technology geek. I love geeking out on hacks and even AI and all of these things. I really love all those things. But I think it's more of the mindset of how you approach that is probably where the opportunity is, because I think a lot of times we don't have that abundant mentality. We think either or. When we kind of are coming into technology or coming into hiring people from a lack perspective. But I think if we start to like look at things from an abundant mentality, we can realize that the technology, whether it be AI or if it's Honeybook, we use Basecamp, or if it's a scheduling software, like we use Acuity, these things can help you to be more effective and efficient. And if you can lean on those, that's only going to allow you to spend more time as an individual, but also the people that are on your team in their zone of genius. So if you're able to kind of understand that it's not either or, it's both and better, you'll start to see that. I was talking before, I think we hopped on this, and I said, I'm terrible at scheduling. But one of the things I've leaned on tremendously is my scheduling software, because that makes sure that I'm supposed to be where I'm supposed to be. And I don't really even trust myself, honestly, to be able to say, okay, what's the time zone? Where am I supposed to be? I just pay attention to it and make sure it's on my calendar, or my VA helps out putting it on the calendar. But all those things are like how we can leverage technology to make sure that we are able to be present so that we can have awesome conversations, or you can get to serve your clients. You can do all those things, but it's understanding that. And I think so many times we're like, okay, I have to do everything myself. I have to lean on my superpowers and my human aspect to make sure that I'm in the right time zone and I check all those things. But in reality, being able to kind of marry that with the technology, you get to be more present in ultimately what is your superpower and your zone of genius.
I love that. Yeah, I think we all have our own special superpowers, because I believe that's why people hire whoever they hire, is because they don't have that superpower. And then when you combine the two, it's like this full force. So like you were saying, like the visionary, and then you got the operations manager, whoever, because a lot of the times you're creating something and you have the knowledge of something, like one specific thing, but there's some others that you don't. So why it's always great to have one person in your corner on your team, a collaborator, whomever, you know? So I think, for example, Dana and her and I work together very well, I believe, because her and I have different skill set, but we combine them together.
Yeah. And that's one of the most beautiful things about business is that I think it takes so much space and growth, and to understand that even though you might be able to do all the things, you shouldn't do all the things. And all the things are not serving you. It's really what your superpower is. And the more you can lean into that and have collaborations, partnerships, or whatever you can do to lean on other people and their superpowers, then you create win-win-win. And I think that speaks more to abundance than anything else.
So what you just said reminded me of, it was from TikTok, Inside Out. The sequel just came out and I cannot wait to go see it. She was talking about it from like an adult point of view. And she was like, I don't think I've felt true joy in years. Like, and her was when a family member passed away. But in this movie, anxiety keeps telling the brain that they can do everything. They can do the things that joy can do. They can do the things that anger can do, and sadness and everything, all these other emotions. So that's why they leave, because anxiety takes over as almost like a survival instinct that we have to and can do it all on our own, but we are just barely surviving with that mindset. We're not thriving. We're not joyful. You may be happy, but you're not joyful. And there is a difference. And that had me all in my feels. And I haven't even watched the movie yet. And I was just like, oh man. But that's when, honestly, when I approached this session and the thought of leveraging people, honestly, I feel like now it was more of a greed thing of like, how can I enhance my business by growing it, new customers, new clients, new this. But honestly, we can also leverage people for that white space in our calendar or technology. We're leveraging with a scheduler. I don't have to go back and forth and use my precious admin time to what time works best with your schedule. Here's a link. You look at your schedule and here it is. Sound like we're laughing, but like,
that is true.
I have clients that still refuse to use a scheduler and they're like, here's 3 or 4 times that work. I'm like, this is so much extra, but whatever. This is your business, so go ahead. But even when I send a scheduler, I have people that will respond and say, oh, well, what does your schedule look like 2 weeks from now? I sent you this link to make this easier.
It's funny. I just created a Calendly link because I was trying to make connections. And I was like, well, if a lot of people respond, I'm going to have to send out a link to schedule a call, because I never had one. And I did that. And I felt so much better because, again, like going back and forth, like what time works for you? What time works for you? No, I was done. I was like, I can't do this anymore. So I created a booking link and it worked. And I saw it work for real.
So I think one of the key takeaways from today's episode, at least for me, is leveraging people in more than just one way honestly helps bring more value to your own life, but it may help you reduce business anxiety and anything else and restore more balance because you're using your virtual assistant to help do certain tasks that doesn't bring you joy. And you're now freeing up your time to do something else that maybe came from your No New Ideas notebook or something else. Like leveraging people, like you said, can be, if done in a abundant mindset, it's like a triple win effect. Everyone gains and everyone thrives and is not just in survival mode all the time.
I want to thrive. We're going to thrive, keep on thriving and have a good time. See, that's what I want to do, right? I want to like connect with people, no competition. What are you looking for? What do you need help with? Like, I truly enjoy that. So if there's ever anybody that says, I'm looking for this, or I need help with this, I'm like, okay, who do I know? What do I know to help this person? So like that to me is definitely leveraging people and connection and all those amazing things.
So for those that are interested in learning more about you and potentially working with you, how can our listeners find you, Gresh?
Yeah, absolutely. Just to make everything easier, I have a page that you can check out. It's at iamgresh.com, iamgresh.com. It has links to the podcast, the blog, the digital marketing information, just all the things that I've even learned from the podcast myself. So loads of information there.
Perfect. This has been wonderful. I honestly didn't expect the conversation to go in the way that it did, but that's kind of the point of this podcast is like seeing what works, what doesn't, and exploring the boundaries of these soft skills and what they can mean for us. So thank you for being a guest. This has been awesome. And as always, information will be in the show notes, especially the resources that you mentioned. And until next time.
Bye.